The alarm never went off. Thatcher's eyes opened at 5:30 anyway, the same time they had for 20 years. Military habits died hard, even 10 years after his discharge. He rolled out of bed without disturbing the sheets on Delaney's side. She faced the wall, her breathing too measured to be real sleep. He pulled on work clothes and boots, the leather soft from years of construction sites. Outside, November air bit at his face as he surveyed the deck he'd been fixing for 3 weekends. The boards creaked under his weight, but they'd hold. Everything he built held. The hammer felt right in his hands. 3 strikes per nail, never more. Waste was weakness, and Thatcher Wynne had no use for either. Pine boards aligned under his touch, each one measured twice and cut once. The way his father taught him. The way he'd taught himself to live. Dad! Kinsey stood in the doorway, still in her dinosaur pajamas. Her dark hair stuck up in all directions, but her eyes were sharp. Too sharp for 9 years old. Morning, kiddo. He set down the hammer. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. She stepped onto the deck, bare feet careful on the coal boards. Mom's phone kept buzzing. Something twisted in Thatcher's chest. Probably work stuff. Kinsey nodded, but her eyes said she knew better. She always knew better. Are you fixing this because it's broken? Or because you want to fix something? The question hit harder than it should have. Thatcher looked at his daughter, really looked. What'd she gotten so wise? When had she started seeing through the cracks he thought he'd hidden? Both, maybe. He picked up another board. Go get ready for school. I'll make breakfast. Inside, the kitchen felt too quiet. Delaney's coffee cup sat in the sink, lipstick stains on the rim. The same shade she'd worn yesterday, and the day before. Why had she stopped trying new colors? Thatcher cracked eggs into a pan, the sizzle filling the silence. He sectioned a grapefruit, arranged toast on Kinsey's plate. Everything in its place. Everything controlled. Lunch money's on the counter. He called up the stairs. Thanks, Dad. Kinsey's voice carried down, followed by the sound of her getting ready. At least one thing in his house still worked the way it should. Delaney appeared as he was washing dishes. She wore a blue dress he hadn't seen before, her hair perfect despite the early hour. When had she started getting up this early? When had she stopped looking tired? Coffee. He gestured to the pot. I'll grab some on the way. She kissed his cheek, her lips cold. Late meeting tonight. Don't wait up. The words came too easily, like she'd practiced them. Thatcher nodded and watched her go. Her purse was new too, leather he couldn't afford on his supervisor's pay. Kinsey came down as the front door closed. She looked out the window, watching her mother's car pull away. She's different now, Kinsey said. Different how? She smells different, talks different, like she's pretending to be someone else. Thatcher's hands stilled on the dish towel. People change sometimes, sweetheart. Do you? The question hung between them. Thatcher looked at his daughter, saw himself in her stubborn jaw, her steady gaze. But her intuition came from somewhere else. Somewhere deeper. Not about the things that matter. He handed her the lunch he'd packed. Sandwich, apple, cookies. The same every day because routine meant safety. Come on, I'll drive you. The construction site buzzed with controlled chaos. Thatcher walked the perimeter, checking foundations, measuring angles. Everything had to be exact. One mistake could bring down everything they'd built. His phone buzzed. A text from Delaney. Meeting running long. Don't wait dinner. He stared at the message. The same words she'd used last week. And the week before. Patterns told stories. And this story had too many holes. Boss. Jake, his newest hire, approached with blueprints. The electrical's off by 6 inches. Wanting to call the contractor. I'll handle it. Thatcher took the plans. 6 inches was 6 inches. Close wasn't good enough in construction. Close got people killed. By 6 o'clock. The site was empty except for Thatcher. He sat in his truck, watching the skeleton of the building they were raising. In 3 months, it would house a family. Kids would sleep safe in rooms he'd measured and built. The thought used to satisfy him. Now it felt hollow. His phone buzzed again. Delaney, home by 10. Love you. Love you. When had those words started feeling like lies? 3 miles across town, Delaney sat in Harlan's Honda, her hands shaking. The parking lot was empty except for a few scattered cars. Safe. Hidden. You said this would be done by now. Harlan's voice carried an edge that made her stomach clench. He's not going to let you just leave. I need more time. Delaney twisted her wedding ring, the gold worn from 18 years of wear. He's not stupid. If I rush, he'll know something's wrong. Time's up. Harlan leaned closer, his cologne too strong in the small space. I've got debts, Delaney. People who don't care about your marriage problems. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we stop asking for permission. The words hit her like cold water. No, we agreed. A clean break. Divorce, split assets, start over. With what assets? Harlan laughed, but it wasn't pleasant. You think he's going to hand over half of everything? Think he'll let you take the kid? Delaney's chest tightened. She'd watched Thatcher with Kinsey, seen the way his whole face changed when their daughter walked into her room. He'd fight for her. Fight dirty if he had to. There has to be another way. There is. Harlan's hand covered hers, his touch gentle despite his words. But it requires commitment. Real commitment. What kind of commitment? He smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, Delaney felt afraid. Thatcher's investigation started small. Receipt checks, credit card statements, mileage on her car. 20 years of marriage had taught him Delaney's patterns. Now those patterns were breaking down. Tuesday, claimed to be at book club. The library was closed for renovations. Thursday, said she was shopping with friends. Her credit card showed gas purchases 2 towns over. Friday, late meeting again. But her office building was dark when he drove by at 8. He didn't confront her. Confrontation was emotion, and emotion made people stupid. Instead, he planned, measured, prepared. The phone was the key. She'd gotten careless, leaving it on the counter while she showered. Thatcher's hands moved with the same precision he used to frame walls. Copy the data. Transfer to backup device. Replace phone exactly where she'd left it. 10 minutes. No trace. That night, he sat in his workshop, scrolling through months of text messages. The truth hit him like a physical blow. Not just an affair. Planning. Scheming. Talking about him like he was an obstacle to remove. Harlan, he won't make it easy. Delaney, he doesn't have to make it easy. He just has to be gone. Harlan, how gone are we talking? Delaney, gone enough that it doesn't matter what he wants anymore. Thatcher set the phone down, his hand steady. 20 years of marriage. A daughter they'd made together. And she was planning to erase him like he'd never existed. But Thatcher hadn't survived 3 tours overseas by letting enemies make the first move. If Delaney wanted war, she'd get one. But it would be fought on his terms. Ruby Wynn's voice carried from the kitchen, sharp as the carving knife in her hand. That woman's up to something. Thatcher. Mark my words. Mom. Thatcher's warning tone had ended arguments since he was 15. Don't mom me. I've had 67 Thanksgivings, and I know trouble when I see it. Ruby gestured with the knife toward the dining room where Delaney arranged flowers. She's been different all year. Distant. Like she's already gone in her head. Clive looked up from his newspaper, the sports section folded to show college football scores. Your mother's at a point, son. Something shifted. Thatcher's jaw tightened. Even his parents could see what he'd been trying to ignore. The change in Delaney wasn't subtle anymore. It was written in every fake smile, every avoided conversation. Every night, she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. Family business stays in the family, Thatcher said. Exactly why we're talking. Ruby's voice softened. That little girl doesn't deserve to get caught in whatever storm's coming. Through the doorway, Kinsey sat on the floor, arranging place cards with careful precision. She'd insisted on making them herself, each one decorated with tiny turkeys and gold stars. At 9, she still believed family dinners were supposed to be happy. Dinner in 10 minutes, Delaney called, her voice bright with forced cheer. The dining room filled with the controlled chaos of family gathering. Clive said grace, his voice steady and strong despite 70 years. Ruby passed dishes with military efficiency. Kinsey chattered about school, her teacher, the parade they'd watch tomorrow. Delaney played her part perfectly, smiled at the right moments, laughed at Clive's stories, asked Ruby about her garden. But Thatcher watched her eyes. They kept drifting to her phone, checking for messages she couldn't read at the table. Time for dessert. Ruby announced as plates were cleared. 2 cakes appeared. Pecan for Thatcher, his favorite since childhood. Red velvet for Delaney, rich and dramatic like she used to be. Both homemade, both perfect. Both potential weapons in a war nobody else knew was being fought. I'll serve, Delaney said, taking the knife. Thatcher watched her hands as she cut. Steady, confident. The same hands that had texted about making him disappear. He accepted his slice with a nod, noting how she avoided his eyes. Wait. Kinsey bounced at her chair. The red one looks yummier. Can I switch with Daddy? Kinsey, don't be rude, Delaney said, but her voice cracked. It's fine. Thatcher reached for his daughter's plate. Fair trade. The switch happened fast. Kinsey beamed, diving into her pecan cake. Thatcher took a bite of red velvet, watching Delaney's face pale. Then Delaney lifted her fork. The first bite went down normally. The second made her cough. By the third, she was doubled over, gasping. Delaney. Ruby was on her feet. That Delaney's face went white, then blue. Her hands clawed at her throat as she fell from her chair, body convulsing on the hardwood floor. Call 911, Thatcher shouted, but he was already moving, fingers on her pulse, checking her airway. His military training kicked in, muscle memory overriding shock. Kinsey screamed. Ruby gathered her close, shielding her from the sight of her mother dying on the dining room floor. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. Paramedics worked with controlled urgency, starting IVs, checking vitals, loading Delaney onto a stretcher. Thatcher followed them out, his mind clear and cold. In the chaos. Nobody noticed him slip the leftover cake into a container. Evidence. Insurance. Proof of whatever game his wife had been playing. But as the ambulance pulled away, one thought cut through everything else. Kinsey had saved his life by switching those plates. His 9-year-old daughter had seen something the adults missed, which meant Delaney had tried to kill him. And failed. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Thatcher sat in a plastic chair, watching doctors and nurses move with practiced efficiency. Ruby held Kinsey close, both of them quiet. Clive paced, his limp more pronounced when he was stressed. Mr. Wynn, a doctor approached, clipboard in hand. Your wife is stable. We're running tests, but preliminary results show digitalis poisoning. Digitalis. Ruby's voice cracked. Heart medication. In high doses, it's lethal. She's lucky to be alive. Thatcher nodded, his face giving nothing away. Can I see her? She's sedated. Tomorrow would be better. As the doctor walked away, Detective Margot Sennett appeared. Tall, sharp-eyed, with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Thatcher knew her by reputation. 25 years on the force. Most of them spent solving cases other cops couldn't crack. Mr. Wynn, I need to ask some questions about tonight. They moved to a quiet corner. Sennett pulled out a notebook, her pen ready. Tell me about dinner. Who was there? What was served? Anything unusual? Thatcher laid out the facts. The family gathering. The 2 cakes. Kinsey's switch. His words were precise, emotionless. Just facts. So your daughter ate the cake meant for you. That's right. And your wife ate the cake meant for your daughter? Yes. Sennett's pen stopped moving. That's some lucky timing. Lucky for me. Not so much for my wife. Any reason someone might want to hurt you, Mr. Wynn? I'm a construction supervisor. I follow safety rules. Some people don't like that. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Sennett's eyes said she knew it. We'll need to test the remaining cake. And I want to talk to everyone who was at dinner. Of course. As Sennett walked away, Kinsey appeared at Thatcher's side. Her small hand slipped into his, warm and trusting. Daddy, is Mommy going to be okay? She's going to live. That's not what I asked. Thatcher looked down at his daughter. Her eyes held too much knowledge for 9 years old. But maybe that knowledge had saved his life. I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know. Later, when Ruby and Clive took Kinsey home, Thatcher sat alone in the parking lot. His phone buzzed with messages from coworkers, neighbors, friends who'd heard about the emergency. He ignored them all. Instead, he thought about the cake. About Delaney's face when Kinsey suggested switching. About the digitalis that was meant for his heart, not hers. His wife had tried to kill him. And if not for their daughter's innocent desire for red velvet cake, she would have succeeded. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. But Thatcher Wynne had been betrayed before. In combat, betrayal meant death. In marriage, it meant something worse that IT meant war. Detective Sennett's office was exactly what Thatcher expected. Clean desk, organized files, coffee cup with rings from years of late nights. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Thanks for coming in. How's your wife?" "Recovering." Thatcher set a flash drive on her desk. "I thought you might find this interesting." Sennett plugged it into her computer, her expression neutral as she scrolled through screenshots. Text messages, call logs, bank records, months of evidence laid out with military precision. "Where did you get this?" "Backup files from our shared phone plan." It was technically true. The how mattered less than the what, and what he'd found painted a clear picture of betrayal and planning. "This Harlan Mott," Sennett said, clicking through messages. "He's been encouraging her to leave you, among other things, and she withdrew $40,000 in cash over 2 months. Any idea why?" "None whatsoever." Sennett leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Wynne, I have to ask, did you know about the affair before last night?" "I suspected something was wrong. I didn't know what, and you didn't confront her. I needed to be sure before I acted." Sennett studied him. "You're very calm for a man whose wife tried to poison him. Getting emotional won't change what happened." "No, but most people would be angry. Hurt. Something." Thatcher met her gaze. "I am angry, detective. I'm furious. But fury without focus is just noise." She nodded slowly. "I'll look into Harlan Mott, and we'll need you to keep this information confidential while we investigate." "Of course." As Thatcher left the police station, his phone rang. Delaney's number. "Thatcher? I'm so scared. The doctors won't tell me anything, and I keep thinking about what could have happened to you if—" Her voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion. But Thatcher had read her texts. He knew exactly how good an actress his wife could be. "Don't worry about that now. Focus on getting better. Can you come see me? I need to talk to you. Soon. Ruby's watching Kinsey, and I don't want to leave her too long. She must be so frightened. She's strong, like her father." Silence stretched between them. When Delaney spoke again, her voice was smaller. "I love you, Thatcher. Whatever happens, remember that I love you." "I'll remember." He ended the call and sat in his truck, staring at the phone. Love. She'd used that word while plotting his death. Used it like a weapon, meant to disarm and confuse. But Thatcher Wynne had stopped believing in love the moment he read those text messages. Now he believed in evidence. In justice. In making sure his daughter never had to grow up wondering why her mother tried to kill her father. The house felt too quiet without Delaney's presence. Thatcher made dinner for himself and Kinsey, the same meal he'd made 100 times before. Spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread, simple food that required focus and routine. Kinsey picked at her plate, pushing noodles around without eating. Her face was pale, and she'd barely spoken since coming home from school. "Talk to me, kiddo. Is Mommy really sick?" "She's getting better." "But why did she get sick?" Thatcher set down his fork. The question he'd been dreading. The conversation that would change everything. Someone put medicine in her food. Medicine that made her sick. Bad medicine. Very bad. Kinsey nodded, her young mind processing information that no child should have to understand. "Daddy? I saw something the night before Thanksgiving." "What did you see?" "Mommy was in the kitchen late. After you went to bed. She was stirring something into the sauce for the cake." The words hit Thatcher like a punch to the chest. "What kind of something?" "Little white pills." She crushed them up and stirred them in. Kinsey's eyes filled with tears. "I thought maybe it was medicine to make the cake taste better. But it wasn't, was it?" "No, sweetheart. It wasn't. She was trying to make you sick." It wasn't a question. Kinsey's voice carried the weight of knowledge no 9-year-old should possess. But she'd seen the truth that adults try to hide. "I think so. That's why I switched the cakes. I didn't know why, but something felt wrong." Thatcher pulled his daughter close, her small body warm against his chest. She'd save his life with a child's instinct for danger. Save him from the woman who was supposed to love them both. "You did good, Kinsey. You did exactly right. Is Mommy going to jail?" "I don't know. Are you going to forgive her?" The question cut deep. Forgiveness. The concept his military chaplain had preached about. The virtue Ruby had tried to teach him. The weakness that got people killed in combat. "No," he said quietly. Some things can't be forgiven. Kinsey nodded against his chest. I won't forgive her either. Harlan Mott worked at a warehouse on the industrial side of town. Thatcher parked across the street at 5:30, watching workers file out after their shift. He'd learned patience in the military. Surveillance was just another construction project. Measure twice, cut once. Harlan emerged at 5:45, talking on his phone. He was smaller than Thatcher expected, with thin shoulders and soft hands that had never built anything solid. The kind of man who lived by taking from others. Thatcher followed at a distance, noting the route, the stops, the patterns. Harlan drove to a bar on Maple Street, then to a gas station, then to an apartment complex that had seen better decades. Phase 1, establish routine. Phase 2 came the next day. Public records search at the courthouse. Property ownership, criminal history, civil suits. The information painted a picture of a man who moved frequently, used multiple addresses, and had a talent for disappearing when trouble arrived. But trouble always left traces. And Thatcher knew how to follow them. The breakthrough came from an old arrest record. Harlan Mott, arrested for financial fraud 3 years ago. Charges reduced in exchange for information about larger targets. Name changed from Harlan Brost as part of a plea agreement. Harlan Brost. The man who'd convinced his wife to commit murder had a criminal record for fraud. A man who lived by deceiving others had deceived Delaney into thinking she could trust him. Thatcher photographed the records, copied the case numbers, traced the connections. By the time he left the courthouse, he had enough information to bury Harlan Mott's 6 ways to Sunday. But information was ammunition. And ammunition was useless unless you knew when to fire. The independent lab was located in Portland, 2 hours from Dunfield. Thatcher made the drive on a Saturday, leaving Kinsey with Ruby and Clive. He carried the cake sample in a cooler, treating it like the evidence it was .doctor. Martinez wore wire-rimmed glasses and a lab coat that had seen too many years of chemical stains. She accepted the sample with professional curiosity. What are we testing for? Digitalis. Heart medication. Suspected poisoning. Confirmed poisoning. I need to know which piece had the digitalis. She nodded. Results in 48 hours. The drive home gave Thatcher time to think. Time to plan. Time to prepare for the war that was coming. His phone buzzed with a call from Sonia Travers. His oldest friend, the one person who'd known him before the military, before marriage, before everything got complicated. Heard about Delaney. How are you holding up? I'm fine. Thatcher, it's me. Try again. Sonia had always been able to see through his defenses. They'd grown up 3 houses apart, gone to the same schools, shared the same dreams of getting out of Dunfield and seeing the world. She'd become a counselor. He'd become a soldier. But the friendship had survived everything. I need a favor. Name it. I need you to send something to a lab for me. Can't be connected to my name. Silence. Then, is this about Delaney trying to poison you? How did you? Small town. Kinsey told her friend Emma, who told her mother, who told everyone else. The story's already spreading. Thatcher closed his eyes. He'd hoped to keep Kinsey out of the public part of this. But secrets had a way of leaking in places like Dunfield. The favor. I'll do it. But I want to know why. Because the truth matters. And I need proof that can't be questioned. You already have proof. The police tested the cake. I need independent confirmation. Insurance. Sonia was quiet for a long moment. You're not planning to forgive her, are you? Would you? No, I wouldn't. And I don't think you should either. The results came back exactly as he'd expected. The pecan cake contained enough digitalis to stop a healthy heart. The red velvet showed no trace of the drug that Kinsey's innocent desire for yummier cake had saved his life. And now he had proof that would help him destroy the woman who'd tried to take it. The meeting place was Harlan's choice. A diner on Route 9, halfway between Dunfield and Portland. Public enough to feel safe, isolated enough for a private conversation. Thatcher arrived 10 minutes early, choosing a booth with clear sight lines and easy exit access. The phone in his jacket pocket was recording. Insurance against whatever lies Harlan might try to tell later. Harlan walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, his movements nervous but trying to project confidence. He slid into the booth across from Thatcher, his hands fidgeting with the salt shaker. Wasn't sure you'd show. I'm here. Thatcher's voice carried no emotion. You said you wanted to talk business. Right? Business. Harlan glanced around the diner, noting the few other customers scattered at distant tables. Look, I know this situation is complicated. Emotions running high and all that. I'm not emotional. Good. That's good. Makes this easier. Harlan leaned forward. I want Delaney to be happy. You want her life back to normal. Maybe we can help each other. How? Money. Clean break. You give her what she needs to start over, and we disappear. No drama. No lawyers. No custody fights. Thatcher studied the man across from him. Weak chin, shifting eyes, hands that shook slightly despite his attempt at control. This was the man his wife had chosen over 18 years of marriage. How much money? 50,000 covers it. She gets a fresh start, you get your piece. Everybody wins. Except my daughter loses her mother. Kids are resilient. She'll adjust. The casual dismissal of Kinsey's feelings hit Thatcher like a physical blow. But he kept his expression neutral, his voice steady. And if I refuse? Harlan's mask slipped slightly. Then things get messy. Custody battles, divorce lawyers, public fights that hurt everyone. Especially the kid. You're threatening my daughter? I'm protecting her from seeing her parents destroy each other in court. Thatcher leaned back in the booth. Tell me something, Harlan. How did you convince my wife to try to kill me? The question hit its mark. Harlan's face went pale, then red. His hand stopped fidgeting and gripped the table edge. I don't know what you're talking about. The digitalis in the pecan cake. The 40,000 she withdrew from our accounts. The plan to make me disappear permanently. You're crazy. Am I? Because I have text messages that say otherwise. Bank records. Phone calls. Thatcher's voice remained calm, conversational. I know exactly what you two were planning. Harlan's composure cracked completely. His voice turned sharp, desperate. She said you'd never see it coming. But then the little brat messed up everything. The confession hung in the air between them. Thatcher felt the phone in his pocket recording every word, capturing the truth that would put both of them away. So you admit it. I admit I wanted you gone. But not dead. That was her idea. Harlan's words came faster now, panic making him reckless. I just wanted the money. Clean divorce, split assets. But Delaney said you'd never let her leave. Said you'd fight for custody, drag it through courts for years. So murder was the better option. It wasn't supposed to be murder. She said the digitalis would just make you sick. Weak. Give her ground for divorce based on your health problems. The lie came so easily that Thatcher almost believed Harlan believed it himself. But the lab results told a different story. The amount of digitalis in that cake would have killed him within hours. And when that didn't work fast enough, she got impatient, started increasing the doses. I told her to be careful, but she wouldn't listen. Another lie, but a useful one. Harlan was painting himself as the voice of reason, trying to minimize his involvement. It wouldn't matter in court, but it told Thatcher everything he needed to know about the man's character. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being the bad guy. She used me, just like she used you. Promised me love, a future together. But she's poison, Thatcher. Pure poison. Thatcher stood up, his movement slow and controlled. You're right about one thing. She is poison, but so are you. Wait. The money. There is no money. There's no deal. There's just the truth and justice, and making sure you both pay for what you try to do. Harlan's face went white. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Thatcher smiled, the expression cold and final. And I will. He left Harlan sitting in the booth, panic finally settling over the man's features like a death shroud. The recording was complete. The trap was sprung. All that remained was watching the pieces fall. Detective Sennett's phone rang at 6 in the morning. Thatcher's voice was calm, professional. I have information you need to hear. It's Saturday, Mr. Wynn. Evil doesn't take weekends off. An hour later, Sennett sat in her office listening to Harlan's confession through tinny phone speakers. Her expression never changed, but Thatcher saw her hand tighten on her coffee cup. This is inadmissible without proper warrants. But it gives you direction. Probable cause. Yes, it does. She stopped the recording. Why didn't you call us before meeting with him? Because I needed to know the truth. All of it. Sennett studied him across her desk. You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Wynn. I'm finishing one. The arrests happened simultaneously. Delaney was taken from her hospital bed at 10 a.m., still weak, but able to understand the charges. Harlan was picked up at his apartment, trying to pack a suitcase. News traveled fast in Dunfield. By noon, half the town knew that Delaney Wynn had been arrested for attempted murder. By evening, the other half knew about the affair, the money, and the plan to kill her husband. Thatcher's phone buzzed constantly with calls from neighbors, co-workers, reporters from Portland. He ignored them all. Instead, he sat on his repaired deck with Kinsey, watching the sun set through the pine trees. Everyone at school was talking about it. Kinsey said, "I'm sorry. Don't be. They're just scared because their moms might be lying to them too." The observation cut deep. His daughter was growing up too fast, learning lessons no child should have to learn. But she was strong, stronger than he'd given her credit for. "Are you scared?" "A little, but not of being without her." Kinsey leaned against his arm. "Is that wrong?" "No, sweetheart. That's survival." The county jail smelled like disinfectant and defeat. Thatcher signed in at the front desk, submitted to the metal detector, waited in the visitor's room with its plastic chairs and reinforced glass. Delaney appeared after 10 minutes, wearing orange scrubs that made her skin look yellow. She'd lost weight in the 2 weeks since her arrest, and her eyes carried a hollow look that hadn't been there before. They sat across from each other, separated by bulletproof glass and 18 years of lies. The phone receivers felt heavy in their hands. "You look tired," she said. "I've been busy. I heard about Harlan's confession. He was always weak under pressure. Unlike you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I was never weak, Thatcher. That was my mistake. Your mistake was trying to kill me. My mistake was thinking you'd let me leave quietly." The admission hung between them. No denial, no tears, no begging for forgiveness. Just the cold truth he'd been waiting to hear. "How long had you been planning it?" "Months. Maybe longer." She touched the glass with her fingertips. "You have to understand, I felt trapped. Like I was suffocating in a life I'd outgrown. So you decided to murder your way out. I decided to survive. By killing the father of your child. By removing an obstacle." The words were so casual, so matter-of-fact, that Thatcher almost missed their meaning. Almost, but not quite. "Is that what I was to you? An obstacle? You were a good man, Thatcher. A good father. But you were also a prison. Rules and routine and expectations that never changed. I couldn't breathe in that life anymore. So you chose Harlan. I chose freedom. Harlan was just the means to get it. And when freedom required murder, I told myself it was medicine. That you just get sick, not die. But that was a lie I told myself to make it easier." At least she was being honest now. Too late, but honest. "Do you regret it?" "I regret getting caught." The bluntness of it hit him like a slap. No remorse. No guilt. Just anger at being outmaneuvered. "What about Kinsey? Do you regret what this will do to her?" For the first time, Delaney's composure cracked. Tears formed in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "She'll be better off without me. We both know that. Will she? You'll make sure of it. You're good at taking care of people. Better than I ever was. You were a mother. I was a lot of things. Mother was just one of them." Thatcher stood up. The conversation finished. There was nothing left to say, no forgiveness to offer, no understanding to reach. Just the end of something that had been dying for years. "Goodbye, Delaney." "Thatcher." She pressed her hand against the glass. "I did love you. Once. Before I forgot how." He looked at her through the reinforced barrier. The woman he'd married at 26. The mother of his child. The person who tried to murder him for money and freedom. "I'll remember." He walked away without looking back. The plea hearing took place on a gray December morning. Thatcher sat in the front row with Ruby and Clive, watching justice unfold with bureaucratic efficiency. Delaney wore a navy blue dress that Ruby had brought from home. She looked smaller in the defendant's chair, diminished by the weight of evidence against her. The prosecutor laid out the case with clinical precision. The digitalis, the bank withdrawals, the text messages, the recorded confession. Each piece of evidence hammered home the same conclusion: premeditated attempted murder. Harlan had already pled guilty to conspiracy and accessory charges. 25 years, with possibility of parole in 15. His confession had sealed Delaney's fate, leaving her lawyers no room to maneuver. Mrs. Wynne, how do you plead to the charge of attempted murder in the first degree? Delaney stood, her back straight despite everything. Guilty, Your Honor, and to the charge of conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. The judge's voice carried no emotion as she delivered the sentence. 20 years to life, with possibility of parole in 18 years. Kinsey would be 27 before her mother had a chance at freedom. Escort officers led Delaney away. She turned to look at Thatcher one last time. He met her gaze without flinching, his expression giving nothing away. Whatever she was looking for in his face, she didn't find it. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. Thatcher walked past them without stopping, his family close behind. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow. Empty. Winning a war against someone you'd once loved wasn't victory. It was just survival. Spring came early to Dunfield, bringing with it the sound of hammers and saws. Thatcher had bought 5 acres outside town, far enough for privacy, but close enough for Kinsey to keep her friends. The foundation was already poured, the frame rising with mathematical precision. Every board measured twice and cut once. Every nail driven with purpose. He was building more than a house. He was building a future. Ruby visited most afternoons, bringing sandwiches and unsolicited advice. Today she found him installing windows, each one level and square. You don't have to do this alone, you know. I'm not alone. He gestured toward the yard, where Kinsey was building a fort out of scrap lumber. I've got all the help I need. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. Ruby set down her thermos and studied her son. 6 months since the trial, and he still carried himself like a man at war. Controlled, vigilant, ready for the next attack. She's gone, Thatcher. You won. Did I? You're alive. Your daughter's safe. That woman can't hurt either of you anymore. And it only cost me 18 years of believing in something that was never real. Ruby was quiet for a long moment. Some victories cost more than defeats. Some betrayals cost more than bullets. Clive appeared around the corner of the house, carrying a tool belt and wearing his stubborn expression. At 70, he was still strong enough to swing a hammer and proud enough to insist on helping. Electrical's roughed in. Plumbing's next week. Thanks, Dad. Don't thank me. Thank your daughter. She's the one who saved your life. They worked in comfortable silence, 3 generations of Wynne men building something solid and lasting. The house would stand for decades, maybe centuries. A monument to survival and the refusal to quit. As the sun set, Kinsey came over with her latest creation. A birdhouse made from scraps, painted bright blue with yellow trim. For our new house. Perfect spot for it. Thatcher examined her work. Good joints. Solid construction. I learned from the best. She hugged his arm, and for a moment, the hollow feeling in his chest eased. He'd lost a wife, but he still had his daughter, and she was worth more than anything he'd lost. The coffee was terrible, but the company was exactly what Thatcher needed. Sonia sat across from him at the kitchen table in his half-finished house, her counselor's eyes taking in the careful way he'd arranged everything. Place looks good. Getting there. Like you. He smiled, the first genuine one in months. That obvious, you're sleeping better, eating regularly, not looking over your shoulder every 5 minutes. Hard to break military habits. This wasn't about military habits. This was about living with an enemy in your house. The truth of it hit home. For months, maybe years, he'd been at war without knowing it. Living with someone who was planning his death while serving him coffee and kissing him goodnight. How's Kinsey adjusting? Better than expected. She misses the idea of her mother more than the actual person. Smart kid. Too smart. Sometimes I wonder if she saw through Delaney before I did. Children often do. They haven't learned to ignore their instincts yet. Sonia reached across the table and touched his hand. The contact was warm, familiar, safe. What now? Finish the house. Raise my daughter. Try to remember what normal feels like. And after that, one day at a time, she studied his face, noting the lines that hadn't been there a year ago. The gray at his temples. The careful way he held himself, like a man who'd been broken and rebuilt stronger. You know you can trust again, right? Not everyone is Delaney. I know. Do you? Because you've got walls up that weren't there before. Walls keep people safe. They also keep people out. Thatcher looked at her across the table. His oldest friend. The woman who'd known him before marriage, before betrayal, before he'd learned that love could be a weapon. Some walls are necessary, and some aren't. She squeezed his hand. When you're ready to find out which is which, I'll be here. Why? Because you've always had my trust, even when you forgot how to trust yourself. The words settled between them, comfortable and true. Trust. The thing Delaney had destroyed and Sonia had never questioned. Maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe that was how healing started. 1 year later, the house was finished. Every room complete, every detail perfect. Kinsey's room was painted sunshine yellow with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking the forest. The kitchen had granite counters and oak cabinets that would last for generations. They celebrated with pecan cake, made from scratch in their new oven. Thatcher had learned to bake from YouTube videos and Ruby's patient instruction. The cake wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Yours looks yummier, Kinsey said, eyeing his slice. As long as you're the one who swapped it, I trust it. She giggled and took a bite of her own cake. At 10, she was taller, more confident, more secure than she'd been a year ago. The shadows were gone from her eyes, replaced by the normal concerns of a child who knew she was loved and protected. Dad, yeah, do you think Mom thinks about us? The question caught him off guard. They rarely talked about Delaney anymore, and when they did, it was matter of fact. Clinical. I think she thinks about you. She'd be crazy not to. But not you. I don't know. Maybe. I hope she's sorry. Why? Because sorry people can change. And maybe someday, she'll be someone worth forgiving. The wisdom in her words stunned him. At 10, his daughter understood something about forgiveness that he was still learning. That forgiveness wasn't about the person who'd done wrong. It was about the person doing the forgiving. Maybe, he said carefully, but forgiveness has to be earned. And some things cost more to forgive than others. Like trying to kill someone. Kinsey nodded and went back to her cake. Outside, the sun was setting through the pine trees, painting the world in gold and amber. Their world, safe and solid and built to last. Thatcher's phone buzzed with a text from Sonia. Movie night tomorrow? I'll bring popcorn. He smiled and typed back, yes, but I'm making the cake. Some walls were coming down. Slowly, carefully, but coming down. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was how trust was rebuilt. One day, one decision, one act of faith at a time. The foundation was clean. The house was strong. And tomorrow was waiting to be built.